calling the November 16th, 2023 school committee meeting to order. We will begin the meeting as we begin all of our meetings by reading the mission statement. The Norfolk Public Schools offers a safe, joyful, and challenging learning environment that meets the needs of our diverse students. Through school, family, and community partnership, we provide an education that inspires lifelong learners and cultivates caring and productive citizens of our ever-changing world. Roll call, please.
Lauren Vivas.
Grace Lockhead.
Lisa Sheldon. Jennifer Wynn.
Medora Champagne.
Andrea Wright. Victoria Saldana.
Erin Goodman.
Okay, I think we're all accounted for. So are we good?
Yep.
Okay. We will move on to the first agenda item this evening, which is public comment. I believe we do have some folks signed up for public comment. I will run down the basic parameters of our public comment policy, which is policy BEDH. We will allow public comment at all regular and special meetings of the school committee that are open to the public. We desire and encourage members of the school community to attend meetings and to participate through public comment in order that all members of the school community who wish to be heard before the committee have a chance, and to ensure the ability of the committee to conduct the district's business in an orderly manner. We do have a few rules and procedures. The public comment period is a total of 15 minutes, so that is allocated amongst however many people sign up to speak. I think we have 3 this evening, so everyone would have a maximum of 5 minutes. There you go.
I can do that.
Still do it, yeah. We encourage everyone to present their remarks in a respectful manner, and please to begin your remarks by stating your name, your town or city of residence, and your affiliation with the school community, essentially. All remarks are addressed through the chair. This is not a back and forth engagement situation. You are permitted to speak. The committee is not permitted to respond because it's not an agenda item. We don't know what you want to talk about, so it's not an agenda item. Generally, we ask that you speak within the committee's, scope, purview, and authority. So where we do limit things are we don't permit any comments specifically involving individual staff members or students. Is that accurate? Am I reading that accurately? Number 5, that has a strike through in it.
Yeah, it's just, okay. I can't get that to disappear.
All right. And the chair may not interrupt speakers who have been recognized to speak, except I may terminate the speech, which is not constitutionally protected, if it constitutes threats, incitement, or imminent lawless conduct. Comments that may be found to be defamatory and or sexually explicit comments made to appeal to prurient interests, so please avoid that form of dialogue. So, objective criticism of the school community, or committee rather, or the operations of the school are fine. Feedback is welcome. Again, public comment is not a time for debate. So I think I've covered the highlight reel of our standards, and we can move forward with our first signed up speaker, which is Avery Amante.
Do we want a chair so they can do this? The microphone?
Andrew, will she need to speak into something?
Yeah, you have to come up to the mic so that the public can hear you because the meeting's being broadcast, so maybe an extra chair.
Oh, great.
We'll bring you a chair right over there.
Over there.
We won't make you stand.
Do I have to face all of that? Over here.
Do you want
okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
We don't often have a lot of public comments, so we're a little clunky on getting the chair and everything. Bear with us.
I will try to adhere to all of those rules. Hi, everyone. My name is Avery Amante. I am a mother of 4 boys in the district, but I'm also a member of the parent-teacher organization executive board. So I'm here representing the PTO this evening and have a letter I would like to read on behalf of the PTO regarding tonight's equity review presentation. Dear Dr. Alardi and members of the school committee, on behalf of the Norfolk Public Schools Parent-Teacher Organization, we wish to convey our unwavering commitment to cultivating a sense of belonging for the children, families, and school personnel in our community. Our PTO acknowledges the importance of establishing an environment that values diversity and actively fosters a sense of belonging for everyone. We firmly believe that a robust connection within our school community is vital for the academic, social, and emotional well-being of our students, their families, and the dedicated school personnel contributing to their growth and development. The PTO is dedicated to collaborating with the school administration, educators, and the broader community to implement initiatives and programs that enhance a sense of belonging. We are eager to contribute to ongoing efforts to create a more inclusive and supportive educational environment. We appreciate the school district's attention to these issues, and we look forward to working closely with you to ensure the school remains a place where every individual feels valued, respected, and connected. Please let us know how we can assist in these efforts. Sincerely, and I would like to acknowledge Jen Wolf and Katie Iacono, who are our chairs. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. 2 minutes. All right, our next speaker is Kayla Costa.
Good evening. Kayla Costa, Norfolk, Massachusetts. I have 2 children in the Norfolk School District, but tonight I am here on behalf of the CPAC as one of their co-chairs. So I'd like to just read a statement that we wrote tonight to the school committee. The Norfolk Special Education Parents Advisory Council, or CPAC, is run by volunteer Norfolk parents and provides a great support system for families with all types of needs. Our mission is to collaborate with and advise the school committee and administration to continually improve the educational experience for all Norfolk children and families. We promote improved education and success for students with disabilities, ensuring they receive equal access to education within our schools and community, and opportunities for caregivers and students to connect in a supportive and inclusive environment. We want to start by applauding the district for performing the equity audit as a vital step towards ensuring a diverse, equitable, and inclusive Norfolk school community. It's clear we do still have some work to do as a community, district, and we do as a CPAC. While the CPAC's mission is based on supporting families in the district around special education services, we would be remiss if we ignored the fact that inclusivity extends to all students, including those from marginalized and underrepresented groups. We believe it is incredibly important that the district continues to create an inclusive and equitable learning environment for all children in the district, where they learn to treat everyone with kindness and respect while also understanding and accepting each other's differences. Therefore, consistent with our mission statement, our collaboration with the district and the special education department, and in our advisory function to the school committee, this CPAC remains committed to continue to help create and support initiatives and practices that ensure the inclusiveness of all children and families in the Norfolk, regardless of their identity, including ability, race, religion, or gender, by providing resources, workshops to parents and their caregivers, inclusive events in town, and student workshops in the community. Everyone deserves to feel like they belong within the Norfolk school community. Thank you so much for your time and attention tonight.
Okay. And then we have Kenneth Hickman.
Hello, good evening. My name is Kenneth Hickman. I live in Norfolk, Massachusetts. I have a child that goes to Freeman, and I'm speaking on behalf of my wife, Thais Hickman, who is part of the CPAC committee. She couldn't be here today because she's at a research conference in Phoenix, Arizona right now. So she writes, Dear Norfolk Mass School Committee members, I write in to express my deep concern about the current state of diversity, equity, and inclusion within our school district. Recent statistics highlight a significant lack of diversity in Norfolk, Massachusetts. This is particularly concerning given the growing need to support underrepresented students, especially those with disabilities. As a professional in the field of education and advocacy for marginalized groups, as well as a parent to an underrepresented student with special needs, I have dedicated my career to enhancing DEI initiatives. My work in the Leadership Alliance and other organizations like Autism Care Partners and the Board of Massachusetts Down Syndrome Congress underscore my commitment to these causes. My efforts in supporting underrepresented, marginalized students are not just professional, but also deeply personal. My son is among the few students of color in our district and also has Down syndrome. This places him at a unique intersection of challenges, both due to his racial background and his disability. It's disheartening to learn of community members who oppose DEI initiatives. This is alarming to say at the least, and lacks a level of awareness of what it means to be truly inclusive community. As a community, we cannot pick and choose when it's okay to support inclusion. Supporting children with disabilities is okay, but supporting children from different racial backgrounds so they feel like they are part of the broader Norfolk community is not. What hypocrisy. These anti-DEI sentiments not only undermine the efforts of dedicated educators and advocates to children with special needs, but also hinder the progress towards creating an inclusive and equitable learning environment for a diverse student community. My child has a disability and happens to be a black student, so I have the unfortunate responsibility to be duly concerned. We must acknowledge the disadvantages and challenges faced by students who are marginalized due to their racial backgrounds or disabilities. It's imperative that our district take decisive action to address these issues. Implementing comprehensive DEI initiatives will not only benefit students like mine, but will enrich our entire educational community by fostering an environment of understanding, respect, and equal opportunity. I urge the Norfolk Mass School Committee to consider my work and insights of as well as experts in the field by challenging or making changes that would benefit students from different backgrounds and make all children feel included. We have an opportunity to lead by example and create a school district where every student, regardless of their background or abilities, feel valued and supported. Thank you for your attention to this critical matter. I look forward to seeing our school embrace and implement effective DEI strategies that reflect our commitment to all our students. Sincerely, Dr. Thais Bingham Hickman, MS, MBA, PhD, Executive Director, Leadership Alliance at Brown University, Board Member at the Massachusetts Down Syndrome Congress, Board Member, Autism Care Partners, Board Member, Norfolk CPAC, Northeastern University alumnus, NYU alumnus, and University of Maryland Eastern Shore alumnus.
Thank you.
I believe that is the extent of public comment for the evening. Okay. Let me get that backspace. That, and get that backspace. Moving on to correspondence. I believe
those
that
were read,
that was
so-
covered because those were both read, so that was, unless the letter from CPAC was the same letter, yes, okay. Moving on to the school committee chair update, that's me. So the real kind of crux of the update this week is with respect to town meeting. So there were 2 warrant articles that the school committee had put forward at town meeting relative to the enrollment issues that we are having within the district and the effort to sort out what an effective solution will be for that. Both of those warrant articles passed, so that appropriates funding, well, they came out of order, but the most important thing is that we're going to be forming a townwide building committee to oversee next steps in that process, so that it's more of a shared initiative and a shared goal, so not just coming directly from the school system, which has been working on it for upwards of 7 years at this point. And you know, I think it will be beneficial to have representation on a wider committee from both the town administration, and then there will also be members of that committee who are from the town at large, so residents of Norfolk who may have an interest in the project. I'm making a pitch at this point, since we have a packed house, an interest in the project and some background that might benefit the committee, so that would be someone with building background, project management background, financial background, architects, engineers. Education would be great as well. That committee will be made up of a few members of the school committee. Dr. Alardi will be on it. 2 members of the school committee, not a few, because that would be a quorum, so just 2. Dr. Alardi, some folks from the town administration, and then I think there will be
Three community
members
three
who will be
community members.
appointed to that as well. In addition, funding was appropriated to do additional feasibility work relative to options above and beyond a brick and mortar expansion to this facility. So the committee had been really pursuing that as the kind of targeted option up until this point, but this will give us some additional funding to explore the feasibility of, most likely modular classrooms will be considered, and then in addition to that, anything else that might be on the table.
Yeah, I think it will also allow us to do an updated demographic study in enrollment projections. We have seen some changing trends in the last couple of years, so we want to make sure that whatever solution we're proposing meets the demand in town. So it will include the updated demographic study. Should projections come in lower than we were originally anticipating, it could also, we might be looking at reducing the scope of the current proposed building project. So we're looking at all three of those things. And then the committee has flexibility, should there be a third viable option, to bring that option to both the school committee and the select board, and with their approval, pursue further investigation of that.
Yep, so I think we're looking to have the full building committee formed within the next 30 to 60 days, and then the turnaround time on additional feasibility work, ideally by the spring. I said ideally, it may be, it'll depend a bit on what's explored and what's involved with that. So, the goal is to keep momentum moving forward. So the district and the town of Norfolk have all choices available to them and are not boxed into a corner of kind of children spilling out of the schools and, having to react instead of being able to plan responsibly, I think.
And then I think the only two other items that were part of town meeting, the town did vote to restore $25,000 of budget funds to the district. We had, with the budget subcommittee, worked through a very tight budget process last year. We were asked to cut further funds in April because town financial projections were coming in low, and the agreement was that if revenue came in higher, they would bring back to the town for consideration restoration. And so they did vote to approve the $25,000 restoration and a $75,000 capital improvement plan item, which is to replace student Chromebooks that are aging out of the system. So we use Chromebooks regularly for all types of instruction at the upper grades. We're looking at replacing 5th and 6th grade Chromebooks. It's also mandated that when students take the MCAS test, Mass Comprehensive Assessment System, they have to take them electronically on Chromebooks, and the ones that are aging out cannot load the new tests. So we really need those replaced. So those were both approved as well at town meeting.
And that is the town meeting update. So
Are we allowed to question, comment? Now?
Sure.
Do we have to make a motion?
If you want to. It's just an
Should you say any questions or comments?
I don't know.
You know
were
me,
there, so
I was there, yes. First of all, if someone is interested, who do they reach out to if they would like to be on this building?
That is a wonderful question.
Yes.
So the select board is the appointing body. I believe you can contact probably either the chair of the select board or Justin Casanova-Davis, the town administrator, who would be a great point of contact. This will be modeled after the fire station building committee process. So what will happen is folks will express interest. I think there is probably like a one-page application through the town, and then in addition, I think you may be asked to submit like a resume or something just that kind of outlines what your background and qualifications might be that would lend themselves to the committee, and then there will be an interview process, most likely, if there are enough candidates that we can be picky, or the select board can be picky and choosy. There will be interviews most likely in December into...
I think so.
Ideally, I'm just going to say December. I'm not going to put January out as an option.
There is a timeline to this because we are trying to bring forward a financially conservative and appropriate solution in time to move forward with design services and construction before we're needing to put in a temporary solution or a stopgap solution because of enrollment growth. So we're trying to do this in an expedited way. The only other thing is that on Monday night at the select board meeting, we have to put forward a charge that really identifies what the responsibilities of this committee will be, what the stages will be, who can apply. They are going to be reviewing that chart, the draft charge we sent over, and voting to approve that on Monday night. So once that's done, then it will become public and people can apply if they're interested.
So
Happy to
town
talk to anybody
administrator.
that wants to be on the building committee. So, great.
And secondly, I think many people who know me know my feelings. I don't have young children at HOD, and my youngest is actually going to be aging out of Freeman Kennedy. I've been very concerned about space issues. I feel horrible for the kids at HOD, and I'm just going on record that I do not, I think building an expansion is the brick and mortar is the best way, and as a teacher, portables, or as they mentioned at town meeting, if you weren't there, a third site to lease another building somewhere else is not an acceptable option. So I'm just going to put it out there. I feel that we are putting it out longer. I understand, let's redo everything and just make sure we all have our ducks in the row, but I'm going out on record that when the kids are like, oh, we have no art room, or we are using part of the cafeteria to do some of the lessons, I'm putting it on the record, I don't think it's a good idea, but here we are. So it's really up my craw. I'll say that to anybody.
Easy with the gavel.
So to that, I wanted to raise as well, I had, at town meeting, was the first time I had heard the possibility of leasing a building outside of the town, potentially, which feels, I don't think this is the venue, but that feels outside of where anybody would feel comfortable. Is that going to be part of the scope of the building committee?
I think that's a really good question, and there's all kinds of, I think people are throwing out all kinds of potential solutions. The charge that we're putting forward is to explore a potential modular solution.
Yep.
We are not our recommendation was the brick and mortar. We understand that financial circumstances have changed, and people want to make sure that that is the best solution. So the charge is to evaluate two potential modular options, a single-story modular or a two-story modular, to look at feasibility, potential cost, what the layout would look like, what the design would be. So that's one solution. Looking at reduction in scope, if the demographic data doesn't seem like it's going to trend the way we're expecting, a reduction in scope in the current proposed project. There is the option for the committee to consider a third option. However, it would, before we could explore anything further, it would have to have the approval of both the school committee and the select board.
Because it was mentioned at town meeting.
I know, but people are saying a lot of things, and that is not one of the official things. If there was a solution, people have talked about, could you look at a third site and build an early childhood center somewhere else to
This was
create
from an advisory
space.
board member.
Yeah, and I think people have different thoughts, but in the charge, it's two different modular options, potential reduction in scope, and any third option, because we might come up with something that we haven't previously thought of, but before it could be explored, it has to be explored within the budget parameters allotted, and it would have to be approved by both the school committee and the select board.
Good, thank you.
Any other? Yeah, I did not. Thank you for your questions. Now I think it's Ingrid's turn.
All right, so the first agenda item we have for tonight is a quarterly budget update by policy. Our business administrator presents to the school committee the status of our current budget and tracks spending through the first quarter of the fiscal year. So Miriam Goodwin, our newly appointed business consultant, and has prepared that for you tonight. Vicki is going to play Vanna and do the slide changing.
Great, thank you. So as Dr. Levy just said, this is our first quarterly update as of November 30th. So this is what your budget looks like, your FY24 budget looks like now, what was approved. And as you can see, 83.2% of it is going towards instruction, which is where it should be going. You have some other smaller categories, and we're going to get into the details of that. So the categories that you see listed here are those that are set according to the Department of Education, and they have different numbered values that you're going to see in terms of a series. So on the district administration, that's what we'll refer to as our 1000 series. So the 1000 series is comprised of the superintendent's office, the business office, the human resource department, legal services, and any district technology that relates to those offices. So what I've provided for you is in a format that's similar to what you might have seen last year. I've given you the amount that's been expended in the prior year for FY23. I've given you what your current budget is. In some cases, you might notice where it says FY24 budget, or it might say FY24 revised budget. That's because some transfers might have already taken place. So I've reflected that for you. And then your FY24 projected expenses based on what I know as of now through September 30th. Of course, it's early in the year. Things change. It's a budget. Changes by the hour. So things will definitely change between now and the end of the school year. So in terms of district administration, you're looking at a balance of about $7,850. In instructional services, this is your 2000 series, which is, as I said, 83% of your total budget. This is comprised of your leadership, your principals, your assistant principals, your teachers, your paraprofessionals, your therapists, so occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech language, any professional development for all of those individuals, any instructional materials, supplies, textbooks. Guidance counselors are in this category, as well as psychologists, so all of them are in this 2000 series. You'll notice that on the right-hand side there's a proposed transfer. We're going to talk about those transfers during the course of this presentation as well. So at this point, the projected balance is a deficit of $17,686. I think that's primarily because there was a need for additional registered behavior therapist for a new student that moved in unexpectedly. So there were some needs there. There are also some needs for additional contracted services for some folks who are out on leave. We have some additional lane changes that perhaps went unbudgeted, and I think to make up a portion of that, we're going to see some anticipated mid-year retirements. We know of 2 at this point in time that may account for some favorability. Again, as I said, it's early in the year, so I would anticipate that we would be able to pick up this portion. And you're going to see a summary at the end so that we'll speak to this as well. In your 3000 series, you're looking at other student services such as your nurses. Transportation is in the 3000 series, both your big yellow buses and your specialized transportation on vans. Food services are in this category. Food services are currently self-supporting in a revolving account. There are other student activities such as your trip to Bourndale, for example, which comes out of a separate student activity account, but there may be costs associated for other activities that might have been budgeted. And your security services will come out of here as well. We do have a proposed transfer in this category. It's coming from transportation. I would want to just reflect for you that this is not a reduction in services. It's really a line item transfer. It's not a reduction in services or costs. The transfer took place. There was an out-of-district student who you knew about, prior to the budget being set, and the costs for that student were all removed from the 9000 series. So there was a transportation cost associated with that, which was removed from the 9000 series but budgeted in this category. So this is just a line item transfer. Okay. So I'm looking at a balance of $22,885 in the 3000 series. And these transfers are all pending at this point in time. In the 4000 series, that's operations and maintenance. That's going to be all of your custodial services, your maintenance, your heating, utilities, any extraordinary maintenance to buildings, as well as your networking, your technology infrastructure, particularly, not so much the devices to students, but the infrastructure like your network and your phones. At this point, you will see the proposed transfer of $58,000. That's being proposed due to some salary favorability. There was some turnover in the leadership in the department in operations and maintenance, and so that's where that a portion of that favorability can come from. I'm projecting a balance right now of $99,819 in that account. In the 5,000 series, you have it's reasonably straightforward. It's your retirement costs associated with folks retiring, such as sick leave buyback or contractual obligations for that. Insurance programs, contractual benefits, and any other charges, like Medicaid billing, for example. So we're looking at a balance of $8,585. I will say the projected expenses will probably be impacted by some of the mid-year retirements that I just mentioned 2 slides ago. But we don't have that information at this point in time. In the 9,000 series...
We skipped 7,000, but it's my favorite part of the budget because it's got 0 in it, and we've spent 0, so that can quickly be...
7,000 is your equipment budget, and it's all zeros. In the 9,000 series, there's a little more discussion over on this page. These are for your students who access the curriculum in and out of district placement, whether it's in-state, out-of-state, residential, or private school, or through some of the collaborative programs. I'm going to walk you through this a little bit more. Right now, we're anticipating a deficit balance of $120,406. So we had an additional student placed out of district after the budget was finalized, which attributed to some of that. We also reduced an amount for circuit breaker that was too high by probably about $123,000. So that accounts for a portion of that as well. The additional allocation that Dr. Laudy referred to from the town meeting on Tuesday is going to be added into this account with your approval. And the transfer that I mentioned earlier, that was just a line item transfer. The money actually was reduced from this line item, so now it's being put back into this line item. But it was budgeted in transportation. And again, it's not a reduction in transportation services, not a reduction in the cost, it's just a line item transfer. There is a reclassification that will come forth, that will be, an entry will be made to offset to reimburse the budget, to move the expenses from circuit breaker to allocate out-of-district tuition expenses to the circuit breaker revolving account, which would offset the budget by $124,000. And then the option to use the Special Education Stabilization Fund that I'm going to show you in a couple of slides as well is another option to make up for some of this balance. But again, it's early in the school year, things change, people come, people go, things happen. So that's where we are right now. So in total, the next slide shows you a summary of where you are. You've pretty much spent, I'm anticipating that we're pretty much going to spend 100% of your budget, very little left at this point, and you can see what I just went through in detail with you. You can see the summary, the big picture, roughly $1,000 left out of your $15 million budget. I will also note that the $25,000 is allocated in the first column in the revised budget, so it is increased by that $25,000, just so you're aware of that. Other things that can impact your operating budget if funds are transferred to revolving accounts. So here is a summary of your revolving accounts as they stand right now. I think that's important for you to see on a quarterly basis, to see what the balances are. School lunch is a self-supporting, self-sustaining program with a balance of $231,000. You can see the other ones. I don't need to necessarily read them all to you, but a total $794,000 that you have in revolving accounts. Revolving accounts, I just want to be clear, are specific to the purpose for which the item is described. It can't use school lunch money to buy textbooks, for example. So we take in money for lunch, and it has to be used in the program. We're not taking in money for lunch for students this year because lunch is free. But any money that comes in for school lunch from the state reimbursements has to be used on the lunch program, for example.
And just last year, you probably recall, we used some of that money for equipment replacement, new dishwasher, stoves, so that is how we update aging out equipment, things like that.
We also have roughly $374,000 worth of grant funds in this fiscal year, and a portion of that is from last fiscal year that we've carried over. You can see which ones are identified as carryovers from the prior year by the fiscal year that's listed there. So there are specific regulations in terms of how this money can be used as well. Title II teacher quality is primarily used for professional development for teachers. Your special education grants obviously have to be used for special education. So those are all listed there as well. And I think it's important for you to have a quarterly update on those so that you can see where the status of those grants are on a quarterly basis. And then in terms of your special revenue funds, you have your special ed circuit breaker, which we spoke about earlier, which I did include on one side, but you can see that their balance right now is $124,000. It's going to, again, at some point in time be transferred, but it hasn't been done yet. It's been reflected on the other side in this slideshow presentation, but not on this particular slide. And then your special ed stabilization fund, which has $250,000. So these can be used to offset costs for special education out-of-district tuitions. And so with that, I'll also give you a gift account summary. Very small amount, well, not a very small amount. Your gifts and donations that come in from your PTOs or from parents or from any other outside organizations, well received. Thank you very much to those donors. Has about $39,005 in it as of the end of September, and we use them for proposed enhancements to instructional programs. We use them for Camp Borndale scholarships and any other special events like Field Day and things like that. So with that, I will open it up to any questions or comments you might have. Happy to answer.
Mary, I'm curious, the non-resident tuition, and I don't know whether, Ingrid, you can answer, how many students is that, the 108? Is that one student, two students?
So there were two students that were thought to be coming into the district. There are not any at this point in time. So the balance in this account has been what was brought in as of the end of the year. So that's the beginning balance as of July 1. There aren't any students in district right now coming in from other communities.
And I can just speak to that. So we are not a school choice district. This is not students tuitioning in. We do have a regional agreement with Rentham and Plainville. If we have a student who has unique needs that we don't have an appropriate program for, they may be tuitioned in to either Rentham or Plainville because it keeps students with a peer group that will go on with them at King Philip. Prior to this, we did have some students from both Rentham and Plainville accessing Norfolk programs. So that's what that reflects.
I was just curious because, I mean, I know for non-residential, if they were to be outplaced, I mean, a lot of that tuition for one student could be $90,000. So I was like, oh.
Yep.
No, this
is revenue that we do for a partner district.
Partner, so it's like a FICO collaborative kind of deal.
Well, it would be just if a student in Rentham or Plainville wanted to access our program. We charge the cost of educating that student. We don't have, so it's lower than a collaborative.
Gotcha.
And we have the same reciprocity if we need to test the program.
Yep. Got it.
Just a question on the revolving accounts. Is that like the rest of the budget where if that money's not spent, it's returned to the town at the end of the year? Or does the revolving funds stay with us?
Right, so revolving accounts are under your purview until there's no balance, and even after that.
Okay.
So once they're established, the balances in the revolving accounts are all within the school committee's purview without further appropriation.
And they carry over from here. Some of those balances, just so you're aware, that are high right now. So some of the funds in the preschool are used for salary, so we reduce that. SAC as well is they spend what they take in revenue is used to offset salaries. So they're high in September, they'll be lower come later in the year, but they do carry with you.
And then kind of budget related, because it's on here, the mid-year retirements, are we already planning for succession planning and?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. questions from anyone?
Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda, I just wanted to give the school committee an update on the tiered focus monitoring review. I think at our last meeting, I went over the process that the Department of Education regularly monitors and assesses, conducts an audit of districts. And it used to be once every 6 years, now it's once every 3 years. And they've broken all of the different subcategories into 2 phases. So in one phase, they're looking at your Title I programs, they're looking at our English language learner programs, and they're looking at special education compliance with state and federal regulations. And so we had that audit 3 years ago. This year, we're being audited for remaining special education standards and civil rights. So we had our orientation meeting with the Department of Education. I just shared with you for your information all of the slides. We did meet with DESE. At this point, the first phase of that is a self-assessment. So we are given a list of state and federal standards and regulations, and then we're asked to provide documentation of our compliance in meeting those. So that's called the self-assessment. We have gone through that. We have uploaded all of the required documents to the web portal. We have a liaison who then reviews all of those. We had another meeting today where they give you initial feedback. A lot of that feedback is, do you have additional documents they might want to see? And they'll ask us, can you add that to what you've submitted? So our self-assessment was pretty comprehensive. I think they asked for maybe 5 or 6 additional documents. They're all documents that we have, so we'll go ahead and upload those next. In addition to that, there's some new regulations that they wanted to highlight for districts that need to be part of the audit. There was a new a state regulation for early literacy screening for students that might be struggling with literacy, and a requirement that post-screening we notify families within 30 days if children are at risk. There's also changes to the student discipline law that requires, prior to suspending a student, that alternate methods of discipline are put in place unless there's certain exceptions, weapons charge, assault, those you can move forward with. But for other kinds of discipline, we are legally required to implement alternate approaches, document the effect of those prior to suspension. So they want to highlight those new regulations because they're looking for compliance with those. The other thing is a district visit. So the self-assessment phase is pretty much complete. We have a few things to add. In March, I think it's March 6th and 7th, DESE will be on site to do the on-site part of the visit. That's where they may ask for some additional documents. They interview staff. They will interview our CPAC. So they'll interview our CPAC, again, looking for compliance with state and federal regulations. We are required to send a notice to the community. I think we have that scheduled to go out in December with the dates of the on-site visit, so anybody in the community or any parents who wish to speak with DESE while they're here will know how to contact our liaison to set up an appointment. So we have those dates. At the completion of the whole process, they will also send out a survey to our special education parents. So there's a parent survey component too. At the end of that, they will meet with us to give us a preliminary review. And once that review is complete, it will then be formalized and posted on the DESE website. We're required to put a copy in the library and in other locations in the school for anybody in the public that wants to come in and view the results of the audit. So that is moving forward. I think we also have our rep is going to attend one of the CPAC meetings. I think it's February 8th, if I remember correctly. Once we have the report, I'll bring the preliminary findings to the school committee so that you're aware. If there are findings where you have lack of compliance with any of the regulations, you are required to put forward a corrective action plan. So you have to say if we fall short on something, we have to develop a plan for how we're going to remediate that and come into compliance, and then implementation of the plan is monitored by DESE. So we have to give periodic updates on our progress towards that compliance. So that's where we are. Any questions on the TFM review? No?
It sounds exhausting.
It's a lot of work, but it's interesting, and
I'm sure it's very beneficial.
Yep, we will look forward to the results. Next, I'm going to shift. Actually, do you want to be the Vanna and I can speak from here? Or I can come over?
No, I can click from here.
Okay, all right, great. So the next item tonight is the district equity audit findings. So you can go to the next page, Vicki. Our district has been engaged for the last 18 months in a comprehensive equity audit. The purpose of the audit was for us to really understand where we are doing well and where we have areas of need. I think we started the audit with the district commitment to equity. This was a commitment statement that the school committee reviewed and adopted several years ago. I'm not going to read it for you, but you can take a look at it. It's again recognizing the importance of ensuring that all students feel comfortable and welcome in the school, that we are actively monitoring curriculum for bias, and making sure that our schools are inclusive, safe, and that all students have a sense of belonging and have a voice that can be heard and can see themselves reflected in the community and in the curriculum. We had a district equity committee. The committee ran for 2 years in looking at all of this data. We had open membership, so the first year, you can see on the, I can't read it because I'm too far away, but those of you with better eyes, on the left side is the members of the committee on that served in year 1 of the review. We had representation from school administration, from our special education staff, from our mental health staff, from our general ed teachers, from our specialists. Vicki and I served on the committee. We had IT. We had our director of HR, Roxanne, who's here tonight. Roxanne, you can wave, our HR director, and Dr. Jessica Peppel, who was the regional director of DEI at that time, joined our committee. Year 2, we had some changes in membership, so we had some new people join. We had another school adjustment counselor. Many of the members are our school psychologists, our school social worker. So we had a lot of different departments and our special ed director that were part of the equity audit process. Again, the purpose of the audit was to explore where we might have systemic inequities, and we looked across multiple dimensions of the organization. So we were looking at school culture and climate, we were looking at student achievement, curriculum, instruction, hiring practices, discipline, attendance data, demographic patterns, and the purpose of that was to use those findings to drive our school improvement plans, our district strategic plans, and our response so that we could eliminate inequities and ensure that we are providing an equitable and strong education for all of our students. Methodology, so the audit was conducted over an 18-month period, October 21 to April of 2023. We looked at a lot of different sources of data, both qualitative and quantitative measures. As far as the quantitative measures, we looked at, for achievement data, we look at MCAS results, district benchmark data, assessment scores, universal screening instruments that we use for social emotional learning skills and competencies. We also used quantitative data to look at demographic trends, such as population changes, student discipline rates. We looked at student attendance and participation in programs. And that data came from DESE, from the state, from our internal student information system, and from Frontline, which is our special education system. So those were reports that we pulled down from those various sources and used. School culture and climate was assessed through staff and family surveys that were administered over the course of this time. In addition to that, we pulled focus groups for discussions. Focus groups were used to better understand themes that emerged or gaps that we identified from the climate survey that we wanted to learn more about. So in the spring of last year, we did focus groups and individual interviews with a variety of different people. Go on. The full equity report is lengthy. It's probably about 60 pages, and it is available on our district website for people who want to review the full report. But what we're going to highlight here are the key findings by category. So we'll talk about the key findings and then the recommendations of the committee in response to those key findings. So the first section was demographic trends. Oh boy. In terms of the demographics, I think it's important to note that overall the demographics of the student population in Norfolk have been relatively stable over the last 5 years. We have seen a slight increase of about 1.5% in the number of our students who qualify as economically disadvantaged. That's a small population already, so we've ranged from 6 to 8% of our student body, so 1.5% is a marked difference in that population. Prior to 2018, I think also the district, we experienced a significant growth in our English language learner program. So in 2014, we didn't have any students in the district who were receiving English language instruction. In 2018, we had 32 students. We now have 32 students and a series of students who have exited the program and are being monitored. So while the demographics have been stable in that population for the last 5 years, the period immediately preceding was a period of rapid growth. One of the findings, and I would say most of the findings that we have are aligned with trends that we're seeing both at the state and national level, but we need to figure out within our organization how we can try to respond. We did find that our male students are overrepresented in special education programs and are more frequently identified with specific disabilities, being developmental delays, health-related conditions, and autism spectrum disorders. The district has seen an increase in the number of our students with disabilities that have been identified as high need, which means that they spend a larger portion of the day outside of the classroom and are typically receiving multiple services. Overall, student attendance in Norfolk is high. We have an average student attendance of around, I think it's around 94%. It's very high. And when we looked at that data more deeply, we did see there were some discrepancies by subgroup, not in the category of regular attendance or students that miss 5 to 10 days of school. There were no discrepancies. In the category of students that are chronically absent, which means missing over 20 days of school, we removed students from that data analysis that have known health disabilities, because that would obviously skew the data. But after accounting for students with health disabilities, we did find that students with disabilities and our economically disadvantaged students and BIPOC students are overrepresented in the chronically absent category. Jumping ahead. The other thing that we found in the demographic data review is that our male students and our students with disabilities are more frequently part of formal disciplinary actions within the district. Male students comprise about 50% of our total student population, and about 81% of discipline reports are for male students. Special education students are between 18 and 19% of our total student population, but also represent 44.9% of formal discipline reports. Recommendations in response to the findings. The first is that given the increase in the number of students we have that are English language learners, we are recommending that the district consider establishing an LPAC. So similar to a CPAC, the Special Education Parent Advisory Committee, we want to create a similar structure for parents of English language learners so we can get real data about how our programs are working, we can respond to concerns, and we can make sure that their voice is heard in district programming. We also need to really look at establishing some additional programs for family outreach and support for students who continue to be absent from school. So we have, per the state requirements, if a student has more than 5 unexcused absences, principals send a letter, reach out to the family, coordinate around ways to support increased and improved attendance. However, beyond that, we need to see what else we can leverage to help families and better understand what we can do to support students in being in school. So looking at additional supports and outreach for after that initial notification. Just of note, this is something that the commissioner talked about in Massachusetts. The number of students who are chronically absent across the state has gone up dramatically since the pandemic. So this is a state issue too, looking at how to improve overall student attendance. We also feel that we need to, in pulling the discipline data to try to look and analyze it, we realize we need to have a more consistent tracking system to monitor response to student behavior. That's also a component of the new requirement for alternate methods of discipline prior to suspension. So we need to have a better tracking system to monitor the discipline, and for our building-based support teams that meet monthly with the building principal to be able to review patterns in discipline data and develop more preventative and proactive approaches. Last, we believe we should establish a behavioral health review committee so that we can look at the district's SEL and bullying prevention programs and consider the need. Do we need to implement a school-wide positive behavior intervention support system, such as PBIS or the responsive classroom? So that's more global school culture issues. Freeman Kennedy, as many of you know, are piloting something this year. We had a visit from the Falcon today, who is putting on her garb in my office. So that's going really well, but we'll get data from that to see if that improves discipline and lowers the number of students that are being sent to the office for formal measures. So we're looking at that too. Category. Key findings and recommendations in school culture. And again, this was, the data from here really came from the school culture and climate surveys. We had a huge response to that, so that was great. We had more than 340 families return that survey, as well as the staff survey, and then the individual and joint focus group interviews. So there were lots of positives here. Overall, parents and guardians reported that their children felt a high level of belonging, and that Norfolk Public Schools was a good fit for their child. And that was almost 90%. Parents of students with disabilities did rate high levels of belonging overall, but it was slightly lower than our general population. In focus groups interviews, we learned that some parents reported if their students were receiving more services outside of the classroom in a substantially separate setting, the more time they spent out of the classroom, the harder it was to feel fully connected to their classmates and to their teachers and to the school as a whole. We did, through focus groups and survey data, parents of our BIPOC students did say they felt that their students were highly connected and had high levels of belonging to their classroom and to the school, but they did express lower levels of satisfaction in the area of school fit, and really indicated that they felt that while Norfolk did a great job of making students feel welcome and safe at school, we could do a better job of promoting learning about different cultures and experiences. Overall, parents reported positive ratings for how much students enjoyed going to school, which was really nice to see. Also, how well schools were preparing their students academically, how much staff respected students, and how well teachers' learning styles matched children's learning needs. There were no discrepancies across any subgroups. Those ratings were overall high. What was surprising to us is when we asked parents to rate how much the Norfolk Public Schools value diversity, and it was a strongly value. I can't remember. It's a Likert scale of 5. Don't value at all. Only 58.5% of our parents chose the highest ratings, the highest 2 ratings. That was a lower. It's only 58.5% of our population. So there's clearly some concern in that area that we need to further explore and understand how people interpreted that question and what we could do to address that. Majority of parents reported that their child felt welcome and had never had a time where they felt unwelcome at school. So 88.2% said their child's never felt unwelcome at school, but it is concerning that 11.2% said that there were times when their child felt unwelcome. When we broke that down and looked by subgroups, it was really, the discrepancy was parents of students with disabilities reported more frequently that their child had experienced times where they felt unwelcome, and the reasons they provided for that were around their child's grades, disability, and or appearance. There was a follow-up question to that asked if of what you rated the likelihood that your child might be a victim of bullying at school. Among all subgroups, parents of students with disabilities indicated a higher level of risk. And again, along those same lines, concerns about their child experiencing bullying as a result of disability, grades, or appearance. Recommendations into response to that. The first is to expand the current disability awareness program, and I have to say the CPAC has been working really hard with Dr. Tupper and a lot of parent volunteers that have come in for training on that, and this is an initiative that's well underway, and the goal of that program is to, it relies on parent readers who read different books to classrooms and have discussions around differently abled students and challenges and strengths, and it's to help us have our students develop an awareness and an appreciation of differently abled peers and about neurodiversity. The second is that we need to really take a hard look at our curriculum and review to ensure that students with disabilities and diverse people and perspectives are, regarding race, culture, religion, ethnicity, gender identity, disability, that they're appropriately represented, that our curriculum is free from bias, and that there are positive role models, and that all students can see themselves reflected in the materials that we're using. Another recommendation, and again, this is to address that issue around belonging, is to consider implementing a peer mentoring program to promote inclusion and integration into the general curriculum for students who access their education through primarily substantially separate programs. We are piloting that this year, and we will look to grow the program as we refine it and figure out what's working best. We would like to conduct a follow-up parent guardian survey of all district families to better understand why the parents didn't rate us as strongly in terms of our value for diversity. And we want to have some open-ended questions on that so that we can consider parent suggestions or recommendations to improve. The other is to conduct equity walks. We regularly visit classrooms. We want to ensure that all of our students are actively engaged in their learning, that they're able to build on their own life experiences, and that they're participating meaningfully in the curriculum. Staff climate was another area that we looked at. Overall ratings for staff belonging were lower than we expected. We had 55.6% of staff reporting that they felt strongly connected to their school. We did see a difference. Our veteran staff members, or teachers who have been working for Norfolk for a longer period of time, had a higher level of belonging and connection, and the lower ratings were for new staff and staff members in non-educational roles. So our SAC staff, our food service staff, our facility staff, our technology staff. So that was something that we need to take a look at. One thing that I would say about this is we sent these surveys out right after returning from COVID. All of the new staff that were onboarded came on and into the Norfolk schools during a time where we weren't having public gatherings, we were not co-teaching, people were working in their own educational space. So we don't know what the impact of the pandemic was on that particular aspect, so we do want to relook at that survey again now that we've been back for a while and are back to more normal circumstances. Our non-teaching staff members and our BIPOC staff members reported that they felt less understood and respected by colleagues. That's another area that we really need to take a look at and better understand in order to know how to best move forward. Overall, all of our educators reported very high levels of competence in their ability to work with students from different cultures, backgrounds, with different learning styles and needs. A little bit less competent in working with students who practice different religions, more from the sense that they don't, many people felt that they don't understand or have deep knowledge about different traditions, and it's hard to accommodate students if you don't really understand or have that background. So that has PD implications, professional development implications for us. Teachers felt less comfortable incorporating, talking about current events or issues that involve race or conflicts that intervening in conflicts between students that revolve around differences related to race, culture, and ethnicity. And that's something that we'll talk about in findings. So our recommendations in response to that is to conduct some small group focused interviews with our BIPOC staff members and staff members in non-teaching roles, again, to further understand the lower ratings for belonging and respect, and to really identify what actions can we take to support people and improve their experiences as employees in Norfolk. We also want to consider additional ways to incorporate our non-teaching staff members, so SAC staff members, our food service, other departments in school district initiatives and in district planning efforts. We would like to survey teachers to better understand what professional development opportunities they need to feel confident in engaging in conversations with students about current events without infusing personal or political beliefs, but being able to talk about events so that students can process things that are happening and in an appropriate and age-appropriate way. We also need to provide some additional training for our staff on conflict resolution and strategies for being able to effectively intervene when there's conflicts arising out of differences across any of the categories: race, religion, disability, gender, or any of the lines of difference. Student achievement, I'll turn that to Vicki.
Talking about student achievement, I just wanted to kind of draw everybody's attention that the full report, we did put in some graphs, so if you're interested in seeing exactly what the percentages and the breakdown by year, it is available in the full report. But overall, the team and I have to say that our IT technology specialist, Raphael Sardi, has done a Herculean job of disaggregating our data over the last 5 years, which is no small task. So for us to be able to really take a critical look at how our students are performing overall and through different subgroups as well. So of course, no surprise that we have been reporting over the last couple of years that our students consistently outperform the state across all subject areas, and that the majority of our students are in the meet and exceed category in both mathematics, ELA, and science. We did note in one of the things that the data kind of brought out is there are achievement gaps noted between male and female students in the English language arts assessments, with male students consistently earning lower scores, which is an average of 14% difference over the last 5-year period. This is consistent with some of the recent studies that have been published in the last 10 years, with also how our male students access English language arts, and especially in reading and writing, and specifically at the elementary level. So, so this data is consistent with what has kind of been found nationally as well. Achievement gaps were also identified on both English language arts and math assessments for students with disabilities and for students who are identified as economically disadvantaged. And our district universal social emotional screener, which is the mini DESA, which is administered 3 times a year in the fall, the spring, and the winter, indicates that our students with disability are more likely to be identified with gaps in social emotional competencies than our general education peers. And one of the things that we have actually discovered too, that numbers seem to be increasing over the last 5 years. So one of the things that we kind of wanted to look more closely at that we've determined is that we've really got to do a deeper root cause analysis of the gaps that have been identified. One of the things we kind of ran into is that during the 2 pandemic years, our data gathering has been inconsistent because the MCAS assessment was not given one year where the schools were shut down, and the next year it was drastically altered to kind of meet a hybrid learning environment. We had to do the same thing for our district assessments as well. And also when the students returned from the pandemic too, there was a national dip in performance. So we kind of feel that we need to closely monitor this data just to see how our students perform like at the end of this year and see if the trend is consistent with our findings. We also need to do a comprehensive review of our curriculum resources and instructional materials, especially how they relate to our special education programs. When we're at the final stages of our English language arts curriculum review, and one of the things that we have actually been focusing on, given from the study that we conducted, is how the materials because the representation of that are in the materials, how engaging they are, especially for topics that, like for male students, what differentiation there is available to kind of help support a special education students or students that need extra support. So having this report has really helped guide our review process as well. And we'll continue, like I said, to kind of do that in all of the other curriculum areas as well, to kind of see what additional supports we might need to add, or what instructional practices we might need to shift a little bit to better support those 2 subgroups.
Vicki, let me just jump in there. As we talked about earlier tonight, we have a curriculum review cycle, so we're looking at our ELA curriculum. Next year we'll be looking at math. For students that access their instruction in substantially separate programs, we want to make sure we're looking at those substantially separate program resources too, because our goal is always to help students get back into the general curriculum, and we need to make sure they're aligned. So if we adopt a new math program, we need to make sure that the supplementary programs in our separate substantially potentially separate classrooms will dovetail with the new program, not using different terminology, not using different models. So we made the recommendation that those two curriculums going forward be reviewed at the same time.
Thank you. So that kind of leads into our, we have been implementing and strengthening our MTSS program, which is our multi-tiered system of support, which again, through data meetings, kind of continue to unpack in grade level meetings where we meet monthly to unpack our district data and our state data, as well as we do, we look at student work, so we can identify and make a plan for how to best support our students. So kind of continue enhancing this approach. And again, we want to continue to promote differentiation of instruction and the implementation of inclusive practices in all classrooms. And we also want to take a closer look at our SEL data, social emotional learning data, to kind of see if we can identify the root causes for the apparent increase in the SEL needs for students with disabilities, and kind of really better understand what is kind of causing this, so we can make a strategic plan for addressing the gap.
And again, I think with that, one of the things that complicated this audit is it is following the pandemic, and we know at the state and national level, students with disabilities were more significantly impacted by a transition to hybrid and remote learning, and so we have to try to tease out, like, how is that impacting students' emotional health and social emotional competencies. So we need to look at that more closely.
So for curriculum instruction is the other area that we have looked in this audit. And as Dr. Lardy mentioned earlier, we do have an evaluation cycle that we do for our curriculum materials. We use, it's about every 5 years, which is about a good time for us to be able to gather data around trends of how students are responding to the curriculum, to really be able to identify, like, what are the strengths, what are the gaps, and to see if we need to make a shift in our programming. It also kind of keeps in track of the shifts that the state kind of are constantly also making, so we're aligned with the expectations. So one of the things that the subcommittee kind of worked on is establishing a tool that that would help our classroom teachers assess for bias in curriculum. So that's given from the findings that we were seeing achievement gaps, and the earlier findings that students really were, it was really important for us to make sure that our students are represented in the curriculum. So, so we were looking at a different tools that we can use to evaluate, an instrument for classroom teachers to use for evaluating their resources and projects, as well as their collection of books, to make sure that that we have a wide range enough of materials that, like I said, that are representative of our student body. For our curriculum cycle, we noticed that we use the Washington model to evaluate our curriculum, and that is something that is required by the state for us to use. And the Washington model did a really great job for evaluating English language arts and social studies curriculum, but one of the things that we found is that it doesn't do a very comprehensive job of evaluating our STEM curriculums, which is mathematics, science. So the team kind of looked at other tools that are available and identified that New York University Steinhardt tool, and it really, there's a really comprehensive, it's probably, they're about like 20 pages, I would say, and there's a bunch of questions that you go through, and it asks about, like, are the standards are aligned, like, it goes through questions, it asks about how, like, for example, for if you're looking at English language arts, how are characters represented, you know, so does the curriculum do a great job making sure that we have
all subgroups represented in a positive in the leadership role. You know what I mean? That there's no stereotypes that are being promoted in the curriculum. So there's a really great way for you to kind of do like a check and balance that these tools kind of help the committee work through. So making sure that we are selecting the most comprehensive curriculum that not only, like I said, supports the state standards, but also make sure that it is free from bias. Is there anything else that you wanted to add about that? I think that's it for, I think I jumped ahead. I'm sorry.
I think we talked about some of these, but you can just...
Yeah. So I apologize, I jumped ahead of myself. So, and then one of the other things that we wanted to add is that in addition to what I just mentioned about implementing the tools, it also making sure that we're gathering feedback from staff and committee members. I think that's part of our best practices anyways, but just to continue that. One of the other areas is to provide professional development for educators on culturally responsive practices. So like I said, in addition to giving them tools, but also kind of provide the training on how to use them. And like I said, as Dr. Lardy mentioned earlier, also implementing equity walks for administrators and educators to examine student engagement and participation in the curriculum. So it's really about having consistent expectations so all our students, regardless of what classroom they're in, have similar experiences in their school setting. And one of the things that we really wanted to take a look through our, especially it's very supportive through the updated DESE social studies standards, is to incorporate local and community history in the curriculum, so students can really understand and appreciate the cultural and historical diversity within their own community. So kind of really take a look at how in each grade level, like we're kind of engaging our students and their community as well. And lastly, as always, involving parents and community members and cultural experts in the curriculum review process to ensure that a wide range of perspectives are considered. We always feel that parents are our best partners, so we want to be able to best represent the community, so we need to have the community be part of the conversations as well.
And the last category that we looked at was human resources. So jumping in. Key findings here, we did note that while the demographics of the student population have become more diverse, as we talked about with the L population and some changes that we've seen, our staff is still predominantly white and female, and there hasn't been many shifts in terms of the representation of our staff members. We have put in place some very positive practices to ensure hiring is free from bias, including training for all administrators and department heads that are involved in interviews. We have put our commitment to equity statement on all hiring materials and on our website. We have clear, comprehensive job descriptions for all district positions. And what we did find is what we don't have is a strong system in place to monitoring who's applying for positions and who's viewing job postings. And where this matters, we use School Spring as one place that we advertise and we're looking for candidates. We use LinkedIn, we use different sources, but we're not able to effectively track where we're getting the most applicants from and which sites are effective for recruitment and which are not, and are we missing particular audiences, who's opening the postings and not applying. So we have some work to do there in terms of better evaluate the marketability of our positions, and the ghost is back in the background in the screens. So we need to do that. The other thing we have noticed in terms of our hiring, we have experienced more challenges recruiting and hiring highly qualified candidates for specific positions, and those positions are often special education, whether it's speech and language or therapists, related service providers, and primarily paraprofessionals. The challenge with hiring qualified paraprofessionals is twofold. One, we have, as we talked about earlier, an increase in the percentage of our students that are considered high needs, that require additional support, so the demand is growing. The pool of candidates outside, both locally and statewide, is diminishing, and we often hire our strong paraprofessionals for permanent positions, whether it's a teaching position. Many of our paraprofessionals are in graduate programs, and they complete their licensure, and we hire them for those other positions. So we're hiring from our limited pool. We have an increased demand. The supply is low. So that has a differential impact on our special education students because they require those services to fully access the curriculum, and that's something that we have to look at. Next slide. So recommendations, we do need to expand training for all staff members serving on interview committees. As I said, we've trained everybody that would lead an interview or a search, but we often have parents participating. We had a good community group participate in the principal search. We need to make sure everybody on any kind of interview team has appropriate training and proper procedures for interviewing. We also want an electronic platform so we can track who's applying for positions in the district, and we can gauge the effectiveness of different recruitment strategies and tools. We do want to consider developing some internal programs within the district to support paraprofessionals in moving forward with the requirements of completing licensure for some of these critical shortage positions. Positions that are really hard to fill, behavior specialists, substantially separate classroom teachers, teachers with Wilson or language-based learning training. So if we have paraprofessionals interested, we can promote licensure in return for some commitment to serve in the district in the future. That might be an area that we could look at and improve. And we also really need to we've tried this before, not very successfully, but we need to relook at it, trying to develop partnerships with local universities and colleges that have licensure programs in areas of critical need. So there are programs that have certification programs for RBT technicians or for speech and language therapists. What we've had difficulty with is often student teachers may not have transportation, and it's hard to get daily for student teaching from Boston to Norfolk or from Bridgewater. But we need to really look at that because that helps us build a pipeline for areas that might be hard to fill. Commendations, I think overall we have a clear commitment to creating safe, welcoming learning communities where all students feel valued. We have completed the comprehensive equity audit, and we have some really good data that will help drive improvement efforts in all of these categories. We have an actively engaged community. Thank you for being here tonight. And we have the CPAC, the PTO, the school committee, school councils that develop our school improvement plans. And I think with those parties in place and the involvement of the community, we're well positioned to move the district forward and develop strong plans to address and remediate equity gaps that we found through this audit process. So, questions for the committee, and for those in our audience or at home, if you want to view the complete equity audit report, it's lengthy. It's probably 60 or so pages, but you can click on the link, and it's also will be on our website following tonight's discussion.
Should we discuss, or should we field questions first?
We can't field.
I thought, okay.
So, yeah.
I thought, so I just kind of want to jump in and say, thank you to everybody who compiled this. It is lengthy and there's a lot of really good information, and it's great to get such an overview of our community and how they feel. I do want to dive in deep to some of these pieces. I don't want to extend this meeting for forever, but I think as we go forward as a community and discuss some of these recommendations and inputting, certain initiatives, I want to make it clear that questioning and trying to understand further and maybe having differing opinions about certain DEI initiatives does not make people a bad person, or we're allowed to disagree together. And I know, at least I gathered from some of the letters, that there's this sense that if you disagree or if you have questions, that makes it harder to get these pushed through. And and it's very easy, and there's a lot in society that wants to paint everybody who has differing opinions as anti-this, anti-that. I can tell you, at least I can speak for myself, I can't speak for anybody else on this committee, but I'm assuming there's not a single person up here that doesn't want to initiate items or programs in our school that would further the feeling of welcoming and belonging and valuing other cultures and other people. So I think it is important to just lay that out, and I feel like some of that might have come from a mischaracterization about private conversations that were had, and I think there is some information going around in the community that is patently false about several of the committee members here. So I did want to address that, and I do want to look at some of these, and I want to commend Norfolk as a community, because a lot of these responses were great. Not everybody, obviously, we would prefer nobody says anything negative ever, or says negative to I feel belonging, but those numbers I feel like are good. There's always work to do. Like, we can never sit here and say everything's perfect, but I think when and I'm sure part of the community has already seen, some DEI initiatives within the school have begun. I don't think it's a matter of not wanting DEI initiatives. It's a matter of actually questioning them and looking deeply at them. And how do we initiate these appropriately? Because DEI can be done correctly or it can be done incorrectly, and we see that everywhere. It can be done in a way that is divisive or that brings people together. And I feel like in the corporate world, when companies initiate DEI programs, there's a lot more room for trial and error. And I don't think there's any room for trial and error with our kids. When we're implementing this, it's important to get it right, and it's important to analyze the resources and where the sourcing of these lessons is coming from. And the information, I don't expect a lot of the community to have looked at the basis behind some of these resources, but I think we need to bring it out there, and we need to have conversations about where this is coming from. Is it coming from one specific point of view? A lot of these that have been at least initiated into the classroom so far do come from the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is a very politically driven and ideological institution. And so I think we need to reassess, maybe take a step back and have community engagement in some of these resources that are coming through. And I feel like I kind of pulled it off the equity audit. That's not what I want to do, because I do want to go through these pieces, and I'll let other people jump in, but I wanted to kind of focus especially on the equity audit in regards to the special education population, and I think that's where we can really drive home, because I know nobody has really looked at the equity audit in detail, but some of these, and I think what you said in regards to MCAS, that we do score higher than the state, but if you were looking at items from prior to the pandemic and to now, these scores are horrific. Like, we have 2019, the special education was exceeding meeting expectations in mathematics was 38%. It's dropped this year to 21%. That is 17%. So I would love to really dig deep into some of these initiatives that we can provide for the special education population to get these numbers back up. And I don't want to compare ourselves to the state. Yes, we're doing great in comparative to the state. These are our numbers. We know that we can get there. Yep. We've done it before, but everything is falling. And that's where I think a lot of these resources and really driving in need to focus on, because I would love to see. It is falling for the general education too, but it's significantly more for special education.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
I just want to go off what Lauren said really quickly. When we think about diversity, equity, inclusion, and we think about it in Norfolk and as a country, it has become a very large umbrella for many different groups and many different goals. Many of these initiatives are fantastic, and they really foster a sense of belonging, but sometimes they can delve into more controversial issues. Just for an example of that, on the Massachusetts Association of School Committees website, they highlight a DEI and civics curriculum that introduces LGBTQ plus topics to children at the age of 7. If a parent says, my child is too young to be learning about those, it doesn't make them anti-diversity. If a parent says, I have questions about the curriculum, what does exploring identity mean? Does it mean gender identity? It's just parents have questions, and it's okay to have questions. That means you're an engaged parent. And because you want to know what your child is learning, it doesn't make you anti-diversity. And I think that when we're talking about this, I have met with Dr. Ilardi, I have met with Vicki about some concerns I've seen in the curriculum, And although we have differences and we have agreements, what we always say is, it's funny, we have the same exact end goal. And I think that is a place we need to start when we look at initiatives in the district, because I think that everyone here wants children to feel welcome at school and want kids to have a sense of belonging at school. And I think because you put a DEI label on something does not make it free from scrutiny. You can still look, you can still ask questions. You could say, is this the best way to do it? Is there a better way to do it? There is not one expert, and people can have different opinions. And if we want to be champions of diversity, equity, and inclusion, yet cannot tolerate diverse opinions on how to implement diversity programs, then we're not going to get anywhere. So I'm hoping, and I do feel confident in this committee at least, that we can have a productive conversation about this. That being said, I did want to go into one specific thing on the school culture with the students with disabilities reporting lower levels of belonging, parent and guardian survey.
And they were high, but slightly lower than the general population, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I did email a member of the CPAC to see if they were on the equity committee, but we weren't able to connect. But when I think of members of the community, the students with disabilities, I think of the students who are sub-separate most of the day or all day, or may be learning remotely. And how do you build a strong sense of community, and how do you really bring them in to the population and forge meaningful relationships with other people, not just kind of forced interaction. I do think that peer mentoring is a fantastic idea. I do think there are case studies where it has been done very well, maybe even in this district, and to study and studying how we did that and how we integrated students who are substantially sub-separate would be a great idea. But I also, and this is where I kind of wanted and would still like the CPAC's input on, I think about students who are with their peers all day. And just because they are physically with their peers, do they have disabilities that are hindering their ability to really connect with their friends? And I know we have things like Lunch Bunch, but it would be interesting to explore, is there more we can do for both students who are fully sub-separate, both students who are physically with their peers, are they all connecting? I do think on the staff climate that the 55.6 connection rate for teachers is very concerning. I know you recommended small focus groups. I would recommend almost a full, I know at my company, it's different corporate, we do surveys and they're anonymous, but really getting these inputs of why staff members who are in non-teaching roles or staff, the BIPOC staff aren't feeling connected to the school, because I really do think that is a big issue.
And again, I think we want to redo that too, because the survey was immediately after returning. So I do think now that we've been here for a full year, we want to broadly survey all staff as well. Yeah.
In 2021?
Yeah, the initial survey, yeah.
I did want to highlight something that was reviewed on there as potentially being a negative, but I kind of see it as a positive, and I just wanted to give my opinion on it in regards to like the survey results. I know you didn't show them all up here of the question, sorry.
It's a long report.
Given your child's cultural background, how good a fit is his or her school? And we were concerned about some of the numbers coming back from the BIPOC community, that they were significantly lower. Not to negate anybody's experience, I'm just thinking that I might actually turn this in my mind into a positive, because people who might be in this community, obviously not all of them, might have recently moved to the United States, might be, their culture might not fit in what they're expecting as a culture, but then you turn around and you look at their answers for how much of a sense of belonging do they feel to the school, and their numbers in that community are much higher than any of the others. So even though their culture doesn't match, which I could go somewhere and I feel like my culture doesn't necessarily match the culture surrounding me, we're doing a great job of including those specific people and making them feel like they belong. And I think that's something, to applaud and be proud of ourselves about. doesn't mean we don't look at solutions, but I would like to turn that
the
into.
line overall was high.
Yeah.
And I think we noted the overall sense of belonging was high across all subgroups, slightly lower for students with disabilities. But yes, I think that is an area of strength for our district.
Yeah.
Because the staff is awesome. And admin, sorry.
I just thought it was interesting, and like we can kind of pull that into being, we respect everybody, and even if you don't fit into the culture, everybody feels like they're, a good piece of this. So there were some other graph items or like that seemed low. I don't think it was on there about like how many kids feel like they're comfortable seeking help. So I think that's something interesting to go into because those numbers are relatively low.
Yeah, you're right. And that's not in the executive summary, but in the full body of the report. So when we asked students how confident you felt or how comfortable kids were asking for help, that was, I think, and I think I'm remembering correctly, but in the 60s or high 50s?
Yeah, it's all students at 60, almost 66.
Yeah. So again, that is an area, and we've talked about executive functioning and self-advocacy as something that we need to look at.
Yeah, I think that's a good
point.
The second lesson addressed it, actually.
What was that?
This last one we just released addressed that, too.
Yes, yeah, we're working on that. Yeah. Other questions?
Well, I always have a comment or question. Where do I start? So I know this is a really great start, right? I mean, we're not going to solve everything. I've been in, all right, old Win is going to pull the teacher card again and say, I've been in education for 25 years, and I feel for the staff and administration because this is a lot of work to do. So parents out there, when it's budget time, I know we always are fighting for more staff because that's really what you need to work in my opinion, small groups for all the kids, and to have the initiatives, to find the resources, and to do everything that you want to outline here in it. And to Lisa and Lauren, I think their point is, I've been in education for 25 years, and pre-pandemic, we kind of just, we did what we had to do, and parents did what they had to do, and the two never really intersected. But times have changed, the paradigm has shifted, and parents want a seat at the table. And whether, I don't know, this is my objective view, different opinions arise, and I think people just want to hear and like have, and people really want to know what their kids are learning, and we're delving into, as educators, this SEL, right? I didn't go to school for SEL. I mean, I'm reading, writing, math. Now I gotta, so it is a topic that I think we need to have more conversations so that everybody feels that they're being represented, and not, attacked and I'm not saying you're feeling attacked, but just like everybody feels like comfortable. And I remember I worked with a great DEI director in the town that I work in, and he's like, everybody needs to feel like they need to feel a safe space, and then real discussion can happen. And it makes a huge difference. So that's all I have to say.
And going off of that, I mean, I've done a lot of, just recently, I'm obviously no expert in this in terms of DEI or anything, but there are a lot of like corporate training, and probably not appropriate for kids, but I'm wondering how it could be tailored to that, which kind of negate what's been pervasive in culture is, kind of singling people out and, separating. It's like, how do we call people in? How do we bring us together and focus not necessarily on differences, but similarities so we can all group? And that's what kind of I was getting at with the beginning is like, how do we do this the right way? How do we make sure that we're not creating divisions in our student body, that every year as they go further down, they're growing further apart. And they're, we see it pervasive in society today. I'm not going to, pinpoint cultural issues right now, but like, I don't want my child, I don't want our community turning into something that is like at each other's throats based on, differences or disagreements. And how do we encourage our students to look at everybody's opinions and see them for who they are, for individual people, and not just like students that are put into identity buckets from the beginning, and as they develop further along the line and you have more time with them, they stay within these buckets, and they're not allowed to branch out because now they've been put into that. And I think that might be divisive as it goes forward, and that's why I think we need to step back and look at like what, I know the end goal of this is positive. Everybody has the same end goal here, but how do we get there? How do we make sure we get there? And how do we not just like implement something that maybe it'll work, we hope it will work, but we're not quite sure. And I want to make sure that at least a majority of our community has input and say, and we're all in agreement that this is going to create the community and, a sense of belonging that we want.
Can I make 2 comments? So the first one was just based on something you said, Lisa, on the small focus groups and resurveying everyone. I agree we should resurvey everyone, but I really
need the focus groups
believe
too.
in focus groups. People feel far more able to open up and be honest in a smaller setting. So I think that's still an important component. I didn't want to lose that. And the other thing, I completely agree. Like, the goal is for everybody in the community to feel welcome and to feel seen and comfortable and safe in our schools. That's why we're all here. But I also believe in trusting the experts, and I think we should totally ask questions. You're supposed to kick the tires, you're supposed to get in there and learn and educate yourself and all that, but I also think, like, going back to corporate speak, assume positive intent. Yes. We're all trying to do the same thing. We might come at it a different way, but, I've reviewed some of the curriculum. I didn't see buckets. I mean, my son was telling me he's a dog person, his friend's a cat person, but they're both swimmers, so, here we go. Yeah. So I do think, I think it's really important to kick the tires, but I also think it's important to come at these things with a view of we're all trying to get to the same place, and we're doing it the best way we know how. So, which I think you're saying, but I just wanted to kind of...
Yeah, and jumping off of that, like, in theory, I would I do trust the experts to an extent, trust but verify kind of thing. But I think, and I did review, I went deep into a lot of these lessons, and I think they're very, innocent and probably pretty nice to implement in school, but I think the resourcing and where these are coming from, as I had previously mentioned, kind of gives an overview that if you're pulling sources from something that is very politically and ideologically driven, it shows maybe we should second guess this. Maybe we should look at, like, where is this going? What's the end game? Because we said that this is the end game, but, like, is this divisive? Are we looking at things from an impartial source? And I don't feel like I got that. I wouldn't sit here and pick apart the lessons that have been implemented and say these are awful and terrible, but I'm also nervous about where these are being pulled from. And I think we need to step back and reanalyze and see what can we find that comes from a source that, doesn't act as like the arm for a political party.
I think to agree with that we have we're in a very fortunate position right now because we have an administration who's willing to engage in dialogue. And, I wrote that on Dr. Larry's review, that she's very open to hearing various viewpoints. So, whenever anyone, not to like put you on, wants to set up a call or Dr. Larry's always willing to listen and hear various viewpoints. And it's nice that we can be comfortable and come and ask the questions, and that administrators know the importance of asking questions and analyzing data. And just because it falls under one category, we shouldn't ask questions about it. I think they're always open to engaging and answering and asking questions and finding areas of commonality and saying we agree to disagree on something. So I think from that part, I think we can make a lot of progress while still, letting everyone have their own opinion on certain things.
And I would also, like, kind of jumping off of that in regards to the equity audit, we talked about a couple of the scorecards that are being utilized. And I would recommend, like, I think they gave the names of them for everybody to go and look deep into those. And I would love to see the one that Norfolk has built off of these, just to see what kind of questions. But from what I got, especially from the NYU one, and, I don't want to overdo it on the political thing, but literally their whole preface is based on a research paper that is claiming politics cannot be separated from STEM. it is part of your identity, and therefore it is part of the curriculum, and everything has to be driven from a political ideological stance. And I have the whole preface, huh?
Yeah, we can certainly talk further about that.
Yeah,
Some of the tools that we're looking at are tools that have been vetted by the Department of Education, and we're looking at the content and what's asked, and does that meet the federal standards that we have for vetting curriculum. So I do think, I appreciate the feedback and I appreciate the dialogue. It's always good to talk about things, and I think we do have to I think we are trying to be very transparent and very open about these conversations. I think, as you said, we have common goals. All kids need to feel welcome and safe, but we also do have to recognize, and I think you brought it up, Lauren, is that equity doesn't mean equal. So some kids need something different than other kids. Our special ed students have had greater learning loss in certain areas, so they might need something different. We do recognize that different populations of students, students that celebrate different religions, students from different racial and cultural backgrounds may need something different in order to have equitable access to school programs. So that's what we're really actively trying to look at, and I think any curriculum materials that we bring forward, we are vetting the content of those and sharing them with parents so that they can see and be informed. So those are have been very thoughtful educational decisions, and some of the lessons that we have chosen recently really are directly tied to some of the findings in this report. So the one that went out today that we are using around helping students understand strengths and challenges. When we're talking about understanding disability, understanding the higher risks that people reported for bullying or for lack of inclusion, a lot of that is around lack of knowledge and students' lack of understanding of different challenges people face. So that lesson is intentionally designed to address some of these things. The lesson that we had about identity, it is not about classifying students and putting students in buckets. The identity that you bring to the classroom, your experiences, your lived experiences, your life, your racial identity, impact your experience in the classroom. And we want kids to be able to be proud of who they are, what they bring forward, and for them to be able to relate instruction that's happening to their own life and to their own experience, because we know that promotes better learning. So it's really about the lesson that we talked about identity, was talking about what makes you special, what are things that you care about, what's unique to you, and it's designed to address some of those findings that we talked about earlier about representation and people feeling like they can be fully participating with who they are in the curriculum. So I think we're getting a little off topic with the report, and we do have a budget committee that we're late for.
Have a lot of stuff to do.
But I think that those are only some of the recommendations in here, and we do need to continue to look at this. We need to continue to find ways to make sure that all of our kids are having equal access to programs, equal access to opportunity, and able to be fully present as who they are and see themselves represented positively in the curriculum, that we're not perpetuating stereotypes that are damaging or hurtful, and that's part of the tools for looking for bias. It is part of the federal and state grant requirements that we have those tools. So again, I think when we look at sources, we also have to look at content. Is the content rich, and does it meet our standards too? So I think we can have further conversation about that. I don't want to get too far off task.
No, because I would love to have further conversation, because I think where things are pulled from as a source is a big indication of what they're trying to teach children, and whether that hits the standards or not. And are there other sources that do the same thing in a different way? But yeah, we can keep moving back.
I had one quick question. So I think we did move slightly away from just the executive summary of the audit, but, that's fine. Spirited conversation is always beneficial. I want to be clear on what the recommendations are and sort of what your timeframe is for implementation. That's really the only question I had, because I think it is important information. And so as far as when focus groups might happen, and
I think that the additional survey data and the additional data collection we're striving to have happen this year. A lot of the other initiatives are in our strategic plan, and they are phased already in terms of timeline. So we're implementing the peer mentoring program this year. They're specific, the ELA review and looking at those content materials for special educations this year. So they're phased within the strategic plan, and when we come back to you again with the action plans, you'll see specific like months and timelines and dates for and product outcomes that you'll see for those. So in developing the strategic plan, we had access to a lot of this data, and it's been thought about in terms of the action items that we've brought forward from there. Any other questions? Okay. Oh boy. We have Lisa Alderman here to present the Freeman Kennedy School Improvement Plan. So Lisa, do you want to come to the mic and walk us through the school improvement plan? And just as context, so under the state regulations, every school principal has to have a school council. The composition of the school council has to be, there has to be parity between school representatives and community representatives serving on the councils are elected by the body they represent. So Lisa's plan was developed by the Freeman Kennedy School Council, and she will walk us through the overview. I do want to just let you know, Tammy Ribello, the H. Holiday principal, had an emergency and is not able to be here, so we are going to move hers to December, which will also allow the budget meeting to start sooner. So just Lisa tonight has to stay awake. Yes.
Well, good evening, and thanks for having me come and present the FK School Improvement Plan. I'd like to take this opportunity to recognize, obviously, the members of my FK School Council who worked on this plan with me. So I'd like to just recognize Samantha Moore, grade 5 teacher, Messia Fonts, a reading specialist here at Freeman Kennedy School, Carrie McSweeney, a special education teacher at Freeman Kennedy School, Matthew Bielick, a parent representative, and Sarah Nichols, also a parent representative. So tonight I'm just going to provide an overview of how our school improvement plan is organized and summarize each of the goals for you. Our overarching strategic objectives actually align with our district strategic plan too, so you'll see a lot of alignment in regards to that, and also you'll see some alignment in regards to the equity report that Dr. Alardi and Vicki actually just presented as well. So if you turn to the first page, there's an overarching strategic goal. Underneath that, there's background information, and underneath that would be my school goal, and then it's organized in a graphic organizer for you that goes through action steps, resources, timelines, who's responsible, outcomes and measures, and the progress. So tonight, I'm really going to just focus on basically, what the overarching goal of the curriculum, and really dive deeper basically into the school goal, and then I'm going to go through some of the action steps. I'm not going to, and I'm happy to answer any questions, but I'm not going to go through every single, because I think it's pretty self-explanatory as well. But again, happy to answer any questions that you might have. So our first district strategic goal is curriculum. Underneath that is our school goal, and it talks about during the 23-26 school years, support and adoption and implementation of a high-quality research-based literacy curriculum is our goal. Vicki talked a little bit about that tonight as well, but one of our big overarching goals is to really focus on universally designed learning for all students, and really what that focuses on is there's multiple means of representation and also different ways students can express what they learn and know. And that kind of summarizes, I'm going to do some summarizing, really those first 3 goals, as well. If we turn to the next page under curriculum, our school goal is during the 23 through 26 school years, an emphasis will be placed on continue to implement the multi-tier systems of support with a focus on Tier 1 and Tier 2 interventions in English language arts, mathematics, and social emotional learning. So ultimately, our overall goal is continue to support and enhance our multi-tiered systems of support. We want to make sure that all staff are using progress monitoring tools to identify and support students. Underneath that first action step, we're really unpacking with the staff of the screening data, the universal screening data that we're using 3 times a year in reading. Especially this year, we're in our second year of using the new Acadians screening tool to identify and place students in Tier 1 and Tier 2 groups according to the data that's provided. We're unpacking that at our data meetings and then creating groupings, so that action is really happening in the classrooms. The second piece of that is to continue to revise and enhance our NEST process, which is our Norfolk Educational Support Team, to ensure that we're meeting the academic and social emotional needs of our students. The next strategic goal is around diversity, equity, inclusion, and social emotional learning. Our school goal for that is during the 23 through 26 school years, we will cultivate a diverse, equitable, inclusive, and safe environment that continues to nurture the acceptance of everyone. So I'm going to read some of these because I think that they're really specific to kind of what some of our goals are, relating back actually to that equity report this evening too. To enhance our current curriculums, including our social emotional learning program, by incorporating topics that support discussions around diversity, equity, and inclusion. To evaluate classroom libraries and current resources to ensure all community members are represented within our school literature, and we'll use the district-developed anti-bias curriculum screening tool. To implement the iCare disability program within our school community to increase student awareness and respect for our diverse population of students. Dr. Lardy and Vicki's talked a little bit about that, but actually partnering with our CPAC that we're already doing right now that will be happening this year, where we have, many parent volunteers that will be coming in to read, to our students, to talk about, the various, neurodiversity students, that we have. And it really opens up, I think, a safe conversation for children to be able to have, and then that students are also able to relate to other kids too, right? So that's really what our end goal is there. The last one is to implement restorative justice community circles. I want to talk a little bit about that. The goal of restorative justice community circles is to foster an equitable and positive school culture that focuses on classroom communities and provides tools on ways to resolve conflict from a positive lens. And one of the things that, my goal is, and Tammy and I this summer actually got to take a whole week course on this, which was really exciting. So to be able to work with Tammy, and actually Cynthia Riley, my school psychologist, actually did that with us too. So partnering together on this goal, but we're going to begin to create community circles at the staff level first this year, and then transition that to students. And the goal is to build strong relationships, with each other, to enhance basically our students' social emotional skills. And one of the things I really wanted to kind of do is to kind of, give you an example of like, what did I experience this summer, and how, I'm hoping that we transform that basically at the staff level and the student level. But one of the things, we would open up every day, we would get in a community circle, we would be sitting in a circle all together, and there would be somebody that would be leading that circle. And an example is that, how is your mood like the weather today, right? So that would be the opening, and then when you felt comfortable talking, you might actually open up, and I might say tonight, I'm feeling cloudy because I was nervous because I was going up in front of the school committee to actually present my school improvement plan. A student might say, I'm feeling cloudy, Ms. Altham-Hickey, because I'm anxious because I have a really big math test today. And as those conversations begin to happen, more students are like, oh, well, I might be feeling like that way, or I'm feeling sunny because I'm feeling confident because I feel like that I'm ready to take this on. So it's really building upon like relationships, you know what, and that feeling safe in that environment. So that's really the purpose of the why behind all of that. And this continues, again, under the diversity, equity, and inclusion and social emotional learning to develop and maintain a safe and inclusive school environment where all students and staff feel valued and respected. I think one of the big things, you know what, that we saw, you know, across all kids is, you know what, after COVID and coming back to school and having a lack of, you know what, social skills, we also saw basically a big incline in behavior. And you know what, students really didn't know how to actually interact, you know, with each other. So as a school, you know, I've really focused, you know, with my staff and a committee on how we're going to improve, you know, what school culture and climate so that everybody feels valued and welcome, but that we have clear criteria around that, you know, as well. I think the biggest things basically about that, a lot of these are pretty self-explanatory. And a lot of it, I've sent a lot of information home to parents, and hopefully our kids are really talking about this at home too, but we've had a really amazing start at Freeman Kennedy School this year, just around, you know what, creating basically overarching, you know what, expectations for students, and that is the Freeman Kennedy Falcon Soars. You know what, we're able to actually remember that off the top of our head. We're able to say, you know what, we're here for safety, we're here for ownership, we're here for acceptance, we're here for respect. And the kids have really bought into the positive reinforcements around that with, you know what, getting falcons, falcon feathers, you know what, as individual students that actually go, you know what, for an end goal of school spirit days. So we have seen a decrease already. Adam and I were just looking actually at our term one discipline data. We've already seen a huge decrease basically in behavior from last year. So we're excited to be able to actually present that to our staff this year too. So a lot of great things happening around that. And I think, you know, the last thing basically just on the last one on the page, you know, is really, you know, to continue to monitor and enhance the FK Falcon SOAR around safety, ownership, acceptance, and respect approach to creating a safe school climate for students and staff is, you know, and there's a lot of things that we've done in there too. Our last one is strengthening relationships. During the 23-26 school years, we will continue to initiate opportunities to create active community engagement to support homeschool partnerships and to create opportunities for student leadership. So really bringing that, you know, what student piece back in as well. So one of the things we want to do is to develop new initiatives that will foster community engagement within our school, identified school-wide community events that we would like to celebrate that are culturally inclusive in collaboration with the PTO. This year, you know what, we're really working on a heritage evening that's going to be happening in January. So we're really partnering with PTO on that piece of things to reestablish the Student Council in support of school-wide community building initiatives with our students and families. And Adam, my assistant principal, and I will be working on that starting in January, where, you know, when COVID hit, everything kind of like, you know, it went to the wayside, so we want to bring kids back and, you know, let kids lead and have some voice and things as well. Prepare and administer a survey to gather parent-guardian input about school opportunities they may be interested in supporting. So that's one of my goals, you know, on my school council this year is to really kind of begin to reach out. As many of you know, we have AIM in both schools, and I'm really looking to partner with parents who might actually want to come in and actually run some AIM courses based on, what their own experiences, so that we have more opportunity to offer voice and choice for students, and then actually just let them, have some opportunities as well. And that's it. So, does anybody have any questions?
No, I just want to say that I hear about the Falcon Feathers constantly, and she was in the first class that won the first.
Oh, she did.
Thrilled and so overwhelmed. So there's a lot of great things going on in the school, and I am excited about it.
Yeah. Yeah, we had, what happens too is that the Falcon comes to visit the winning class, so that we have a winning class at each grade level, so there's a little bit of competition, but always the end goal is that we have a school-wide spirit day too. So today, the Falcon was here handing, there's one golden Falcon feather that they get to put in their classroom, and they get a big plaque, and then they get a photo with the Falcon. So it's, and everyone is like, who's the Falcon? I'm like, I just don't know. That Falcon is.
Lots of talk in my house.
Who is that?
Yeah. I didn't see a golden feather budget line item.
Well, we're using our resources wisely with spray painting a feather. I think it was golden feather. It's not rated that 24 karat gold yet, no.
So just by policy, the school committee is required to vote to approve the school improvement plan, and then Lisa and Tammy prepared a 3-year plan. It aligns, again, with the best way to make change is to align the district strategic plan with the school improvement plans and all be going in the same direction. So you've approved the strategic plan. We're seeking a vote to approve the school improvement plan for Freeman Kennedy tonight, and then Tammy will present the H holiday plan at the December meeting.
Okay, I do have one question in regards to this. And I feel like I keep harping on this, the DEI portion in regards to the action step number 1, enhance our current curriculums, including our SEL program by incorporating topics that support discussion around DEI. And it says the resources. Is this specifically only related to utilizing second step curriculum as it is, or I feel like it's a little vague if we're pulling outside sources, and that's kind of what I want to understand.
Are these the additional lessons, Lisa, you were
Yes, those are the additional lessons, basically, that we're using in conjunction with Second Step that align with, social justice.
So learning from justice.
Yeah, learning from justice, sorry, yes.
And this is the 3 specific lessons.
These are the 3 specific,
They're not additional to that.
No, there's no additional to that, so that's what that, yeah.
Do you know what the third lesson is?
We haven't developed it yet, so as soon as we have it, we'll send it out.
Can we... I mean, I think this plan is very comprehensive. I think it's great. It covers a lot of things. Again, to reiterate what the school, other members of the community said, my son is also obsessed with the Falcon, happy to go to school every day, so excited. Freeman is the best. He says the food here is better, even though the food comes from the same place. Again, with the DE&I, nothing against it, but it's hard to vote on something when you don't know what you're voting on. I'm wondering if we could either vote on the rest of the plan and then wait on this section until we get the details of the third lesson, or if we can postpone, get the details of the third lesson, and then vote in December.
Could I interject real quick? I just want to make sure that we all understand we're talking about different sources that these are pulled from. These are second step lessons.
But they're not.
They're not.
But they are. They were provided to the district by Second Step. Second Step has the ability to resource call whatever they want. They're an approved curriculum provider. So we can table this discussion until the policy update is complete, if that would make you feel more comfortable. But the overall, the district, through the school committee, adopted Second Step. And Second Step appropriately has updated their materials. And we have the ability, and teachers independently have the ability to flex curriculum if they want to.
Well, I don't think this is a nitpicking on teachers' individual curriculum updates. This is something coming from the top down and outsourcing.
No, I understand the position. I think my position is because this is a Second Step provided resource, it is already an approved curriculum resource. The same as if Lisa had said, in looking to update
our math programming, we're going to update lessons, and I think there are references to flexing and updating math lessons. And the lane of the school committee is not to micromanage approved curriculum updates and flexing, because from my own perspective, I'm not an educator. I am not professionally equipped to make those choices. As a school committee member, we have the right and responsibility to review curriculum that is presented for adoption, and we did do that with Second Step. So
the only thing that I would say with that too is that typically the scope of school committee is to review and approve programs. Under the responsibility of the district curriculum director, the district leadership, we regularly have to make changes to curriculum. So, for example, the iCare program that we're updating. The iCare program annually adds new text and new materials to their collection. They add new resources, new discussion questions for parents. Post-COVID, we looked at all of our math data and recognized that kids were missing skills in fractions and decimals. So we had to develop our own lessons that aren't from a program. We had to pull from different sources to remediate those weaknesses. And Vicki developed 3-week launching units to address those core skills kids need to have in every subject matter that we saw that were weak. So we had to do that. Our Lucy Calkins units of study for reading, we got notice a couple of years ago that they were pulling out 2 of the core texts because they were problematic and replacing them with new literature. So we took those new materials and provided them to teachers. So we have to be able to update and modify and make instructional decisions. And I recognize that this is a category that people are nervous about, but we can't bring every curriculum change to the school committee, or we can't do our jobs.
No.
But we also are setting a dangerous precedent if we're going to say, all right, the school committee is going to approve lesson changes in this one category, but we're not looking at math, we're not looking at changes to the ELA program, we're not looking at social studies standards changes. I do think that it's an area that we've talked about that parents want to be informed about, and I think we've really worked hard to make sure that everything that we're teaching, because we know people are curious about this and worried about this, people are seeing exactly what's going to go in front of kids. The lesson plan, the design, the actual content of materials, so that parents can have discussions if they disagree or they want to put a different perspective on it, when they can process this with their child at home. We are doing that. That is certainly not a common practice across districts, and we don't do it across all subjects, but we purposely made the decision to do that for this content area in response to the questions that have been asked. But I think for the school committee to get into, we are going to approve an individual lesson, that is not sustainable. And I think again, I'm concerned about setting a precedent that lesson updates to the SEL curriculum around DEI, individual changes are going to come to the committee for review, because that opens the door for all curriculum changes and would impede our ability to meet the needs of our students in a timely way. So that, as a perspective, I think it's dangerous to get into, again, intentionally, the school committee has purview over new curriculum adoption, not over minor edits and changes, so because it's not sustainable. And I think it's dangerous in one category to set a higher level of scrutiny than in any other content area. So I would suggest that the committee vote on the plan as it's placed. If people are uncomfortable, you can vote no, or not to support the plan, or to support the plan with revisions. But I do think that it's not feasible, and I think it's beyond the scope of the committee to approve individual lessons versus programs.
And I do just want to respond to that, because I agree that if any minor changes were to come up, it is unsustainable and it's not the scope of the school committee to do. But there is a policy in place that substantive changes and differing approaches will be brought before the committee. And that's my concern here, is that this does constitute, I think that's a subjective word, substantial. And so I don't think we're looking at minor pieces and changes. I honestly, I think we should table that until like maybe we can put it on the agenda for next meeting because it is, 9:10.
Yeah.
I am okay to be, on board. I just wanted questions, and I think we're kind of veering off into something that was discussed at the policy meeting, which I would like to further discuss in the following meeting. I think we can just kind of push it off again. I don't want it to go in, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can do that. We can table it because Tammy's coming next meeting. We could vote on the two plans together and have the policy update today. And again, I think we have to really think about the level of scrutiny, and I think we can talk about the term. I think it's
Extensive.
extensive change is the standard.
Extensive.
And I would say that the 3 lessons that we've brought in and that we've shared, I don't think constitute a substantive change, but that would be for the committee to discuss and deliberate on.
I think because this is an improvement plan for the next 3 years, as it's written, it just kind of mentions the new curriculum enhancements and DE&I topics. Again, we've talked about how DE&I can be very big and is a very large umbrella with a wide range of topics, some are which are fantastic that everyone can get behind, and some are not. I think that if we have the discussion about the curriculum and define what it was, I think based on this conversation, everyone's very comfortable with this plan. We just have the question on DEI. I don't think we're saying that we need individual lesson plans, but maybe we need to have that conversation first about was this the curriculum, and then we can vote on both plans. Because just a little bit more detail, because incorporating DEI themes is just a very, very broad, and just a little more detail in what it means, because I think it means different things to different people, and one person might think you're talking about this, and another person might think you're talking about this. So not saying if we can't, get the lesson plan, maybe we just put in a couple detailed bullets of what we're referring to.
Okay. I think we can provide that clarification.
Yeah, I can do that. Yep, I can do that.
And I would just like to commend whoever puts forth the lessons, because I know other districts don't actually do that, so I know how much time and energy and thought, and I do know that you're vetting a lot of it to make sure that everybody feels welcome at the table.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
I know it
and
takes
we,
a lot.
even at our last staff meeting, we actually allowed the staff to unpack it together too,
Right.
and take a look at that together and talk about that and things of that nature, which was really helpful too, so.
And I know that email that went out was also very much appreciated, and I think people really do appreciate the transparency and the willingness to engage around these topics, so.
Yep. And we do send home our second step lesson, parent overviews every single month too, that are in my newsletters too, so there's always links to everything that we're doing, even in our second step lessons, like week by week, and our themes, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to go quickly through the next items because we do have a budget meeting coming. Quarterly bullying report. By policy, I share updates with the committee on the number of bullying incidents that have been reported at each building. In the first quarter, which goes through November 1st, there was 1 discipline issue or report about bullying behavior at the HL day that was investigated consistent with the district bullying prevention and intervention plan, and it was determined not to constitute bullying. At the Freeman, there were 2 reports, again, both fully investigated, and neither met the criteria for bullying. For the older students, obviously, appropriate disciplinary measures are taken, consistent with the district code of conduct. Last, we continue to provide comprehensive instruction in anti-bullying and social-emotional. I think one thing that you'd see, we saw some spikes in bullying reports over the last couple of years, post-COVID. We are seeing that start to trend down. I said I would monitor that for you. Any questions on that one? Nope. All right. The other I won't go through, but quarterly, the BICO Collaborative, because we're members of BICO, provides an update of BICO activities, so that's in your packet. If anyone had any questions on the BICO program? Nope. All right. I think that's it for my extensive report tonight.
Okay, committee updates. King Philip.
Nothing, I was away in New York City. Not as bad as it seems.
Lovely update.
You need to go.
Moving on to policy. So we have one policy coming forward for a vote today that I have misplaced already.
The library one?
Yeah.
IJL, it says vote, IJL.
This is our first.
And so this is,
Yeah, just say first reading.
First reading.
I do need one. It's a first, but it was not a,
Not a
not a
substantial change.
substantial change. Yeah.
Yep, so you can see the prior policy behind it that says library resources, and this just is more specific in identifying and detailing how library purchases are made, what things are considered, disclosure of circulation records. So this is the updates that MASC put in place, and it's not substantial, so we'd suggest that if the committee's comfortable, that you vote forward on this tonight.
That makes sense.
So we would be looking for a motion to adopt the updated policy, IJLA, for library resources.
So moved.
Second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. All right, and then as far as what policy has been up to, in addition to that, we are discussing just a kind of general nominal reclassification change for policy IJR. My notes are confusing me. And then in addition to that, we have a new policy that we're going to be bringing forward with respect to public complaints about curriculum or instructional materials, which would be policy KEC. We'll be bringing that before the committee at our next school committee meeting, so that's in December. And what that is designed to do is to lay out a framework for concerns to be brought through a few different tiers of review and assessment. In the event that a parent or member of the school community has a concern about materials or curriculum, it just lays out a very clear-cut process for communications and how that would kind of escalate through a review process up to the school committee eventually. So,
And in keeping with that, we've been working on this with King Philip for the past year, and they have implemented a new protocol. So policy KEC is in place. We've had that. What we're updating are the corresponding protocols for how you file a request, and we've been looking at the process and think that it makes sense to align with the process that KP uses so that parents know what to expect across the district. So it's an actual form that will be online for filing a complaint or concern about a book, the different teams that would review it, and then ultimately the school committee. So we'll bring those forward next meeting.
And Medora, did we want to just mention we want to potentially...
yeah, I mean, in the interest of providing resources to the community, we may ask to waive additional readings of that policy, provided we can get the documentation to everyone on the committee so that we can have it forward for a vote at the next meeting, so that we have something in place, so that anyone who has a concern has a clear pathway to voice the concern and have it addressed. Yes. That's more of an FYI. And then the last policy subcommittee item this evening was at the request of some, school community members. We reviewed policy IGD, which deals with curriculum adoption, specifically with respect to some updates to the social emotional learning curriculum that have been implemented this year. So in that discussion, and I will certainly let Grace provide her viewpoint as well, we reviewed the overall policy, which I won't read to the captive audience we have, but begins with a paragraph referencing reliance on professional staff to design and implement instructional programs, and then moves on to the authorities of both the superintendent and the school committee, indicating that the committee itself will consider and officially adopt new programs and courses when they constitute an extensive alteration in instructional content or approach. The question was raised whether the updates to the SEL curriculum constituted such an extensive alteration in instructional content or approach. In discussing all of this, we reviewed the second step materials, the lesson planning that had gone out to the school community around these two updated lessons, we determined that Second Step had provided updated resources and materials in a number of different categories, and 2 specific categories had been selected up until this point and delivered this year out of 35 SEL lessons that are delivered across the course of the year. In addition, because the SEL program from Second Step is an approved committee curriculum, and these were provided through that curriculum provider, it was the determination that this did not constitute an extensive alteration. In addition to that discussion and reviewing those materials, I did also personally have a conversation with our field rep from MASC, Jim Hardy, to whom I presented the situation and had a long conversation with, who indicated that, in his opinion, this did not constitute an extensive alteration in instructional content or approach. The policy we have was adopted from a mask model policy, so the general interpretation of any subjective terms therein, I would welcome feedback from MASC about as they drafted the model policy. In addition to that, I also reviewed the DESE advisory on school governance that was issued subsequent to the Education Reform Act, which pretty clearly lays out the respective roles and responsibilities of both a school committee, a superintendent, and then the administration of a school district that sits beneath the superintendent's authority. And I personally feel comfortable in saying that this is not an extensive alteration in instructional content or approach. So I don't know if, Grace, you have anything else to add?
Probably far less eloquent than you, but yeah, I think we reviewed everything, including the policy and the curriculum, and, made sure that we were following the appropriate age guidelines for age-appropriate content, and really it didn't feel like extensive. I wouldn't even say, it was a very small addition. So I did not feel it was extensive or rose to that.
And I think that I'm sorry, are you?
I petered out there. I think it's late.
I think that, from my perspective, objectively, I don't really have strong feelings in one direction or another on the content of the lessons that we're discussing. So from an objective review of what the role of the school committee is and what the role of the educational leadership of the district is, I do feel that indicating that the addition of updated materials on what I view to be a relatively minor scale to a previously adopted curriculum would create an expectation that the school committee is overstepping its authority as far as how educational programming is being developed and delivered within the district. It is certainly the role of the school committee to review new curriculum that comes in, to undertake a conversation with the district in periodic curriculum reviews that happen on a rolling basis. I know we're discussing implementing a new ELA curriculum, and that was referenced in the Freeman proposed school improvement plan. That would certainly come before the committee, and I would feel very comfortable and confident in asking questions and participating in a review of whatever the proposed program is. To extend the school committee's authority to changes on a more micro and daily level as far as how instructional support and instructional content is being delivered, I think is inappropriate relative to the role of the school committee, and also, in addition to that, would be completely unwieldy. From a logistical perspective, we would not have the ability to meet with the frequency, nor have the bandwidth, nor have, I think, the educational expertise and training to make determinations on a micro level about how individual lessons are being updated. And from my perspective, it would just be an inappropriate use of the committee's authority. So, I mean, that's generally how I feel about it. I appreciate the question being asked. I think it's important to have dialogue around what the lane of the school committee is and what the concerns of the school community are. In reviewing this, I did ask if specific concerns or complaints had also been lodged with building principals or teachers, or that if there was a record of parental concerns surrounding these lessons, and other than the concerns that were raised specifically to me, my understanding is that was not the case. So I just feel that it would be inappropriate for the committee to micromanage instruction at that level.
Can I just add, I think one of the things that you said that I think is important is, I think it's important to ask questions, and it was educational for me to go through this and to dig deeper and to see, to really kick the tires on the policy. So I do think that that's healthy and it's good, and so, I don't want the fact that we determined we don't think it's extensive to say, don't question, because that's really important, and that's why we're here, so.
Yeah, I am the one who proposed this, and thank you for taking the time to look at it, because I am new to the school committee, so, this is all a learning experience, and looking at these policies and saying, certain language is subjective, and I'm glad, Medora, that you engaged with Mask about this, because, they would have, I think another word is substantive.
Yep.
The committee wishes to be informed of all substantive revisions.
Yep.
So, those mean different things to different people, especially when you're looking at sourcing that's not directly from a curriculum developed lessons, they're curated lessons. So there is a difference, we can say that they're recommended by them. So thank you for taking the time to look at it, because I dug deep into that too, because there is these initiatives through SEL, as you can see through DESE, you can see through a lot of different places, to transform SEL into something that it hasn't been before. And again, this all kind of goes into the entire scope of the meeting, but that it needs to be monitored, and I think it's good to have questions and to fully understand it, and in what extent its place has in the district, and where it needs to be implemented, and what needs to be implemented. So,
and I think one comment that I would have, and my administrators and teachers will probably say that I've said this many times, but I do think in terms of asking questions, there's a saying that the health of an organization is directly related to the number of things that are undiscussable. So if there's a lot of things that we can't discuss as an open body, then we're not a healthy functioning group. So I think questions are important. They push our thinking. I think, again, we all learn from that. So I think it was a good process, and I think the policy committee gave significant consideration to multiple different components. So
just going forward, would extensive, I guess, I know it can be subjective, but will we just consider that new, complete revisions in curriculum?
I would say extensive. So if we, and we talked about this a little bit at the policy committee, if we adopted the Lucy Calkins units of study, which we did, and we won't be continuing with, you're going to hear a new recommendation from the ELA. But if they said, you know what, we're pulling back the entire third grade curriculum and we're rewriting that, that's a substantive change that we would bring before the committee. If there was, if we were in our Go Math program saying, you know what, these units on fractions and decimals, we don't like them, we're going to substitute them with a total other unit, that would come to the committee. So macro changes that are really totally changing the pedagogy, the approach, significant numbers of lessons and resources, those would come before the committee. So I think one thing that you could ask is, can the policy committee look at this policy and make it more, look at the new mask model, see if we can tighten the language so it's clearer. I think that's a reasonable ask. I think there's a lot of policies that have some ambiguous language that we've looked to try to correct. But I think substantive, significant changes either change the approach, the pedagogical approach to how we're teaching a content area, or are significantly replacing sections with an alternate program, things like that. That's how I would view it.
And Mask is awesome. I've called them about certain stuff too.
They're a great resource. They really are.
They'll get right back to you, and during COVID
If you have the right contact, because I was emailing Jeff for a while, and I was like, well, I don't think I'll be back, and they're like, he retired years ago, so, yeah.
I've never called those, so I don't know anybody.
Yeah, they're great, and they have ongoing training resources too, free webinars on updates
they do.
and all sorts of great stuff.
And they do the conference, they just had the joint conference, they do an annual conference that's a joint conference with school committees and superintendents, and they have like critical topics, so that's also really worthwhile sometimes.
And I do just want to add in here, it was never my intention to make, or to look at this policy and say, and start applying it to every micro management. I saw it as extensive, that's a personal opinion and a view, obviously everybody has different. I would never say we should utilize the scope of the school committee to sit here and analyze individual lesson plans, like that's never.
No, I know. I think my caution is just once we set precedent, someone else could say, well, I think we need to look at all those iCare books. So policy has to be consistent, and so that's where
And that's why it was good, Dora even suggested it go through there first, and you guys look at it, so.
Yep. Again, I think it's good to discuss, so.
At 10 p.m., 9:30. Sorry.
And I think that's the end of the policy update. Okay.
We just have some.
Oh, we're in the home stretch, folks. Okay.
One of our longer meetings.
A lot of people hanging in, sticking with us.
Thank you.
All right, so we have I love these, school partner renewals. Let's do it. So first and foremost, we have an application for the renewal of the Norfolk Special Education Parents Advisory Council, many of whom are still with us in the room, I think. So obviously, the CPAC has been before the committee and presented a few times and has been an active... What's that?
So we know CPAC.
CPAC, very comfortable with CPAC. All right, so looking for not sing the praises of CPAC, but looking for a motion to...
They know we love them.
Accept the school partner renewal for CPAC.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Aye. School partner renewal, everyone's in the room, for NCTV. Not specifically Andrew, we love Andrew and Karen, but looking for a motion to approve the school partnership with NCTV.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And looking for a motion to renew the school partnership with the Norfolk Community League, another amazing organization that does a tremendous amount in the community and for the schools. Hey, let everybody have their praises sung. Come on now.
We love them.
Looking for a motion. All right. Any further? Okay. There's a second. Any further discussion? No. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then we have two sets of meeting minutes to approve from October 10th and October 17th. I was not present on October 17th, but we must have had a quorum.
We did. It was the virtual.
I would be happy if everybody wants to, I'm assuming everyone did their homework and looked through these previously, and that Grace's name is spelled correctly.
Hey, I spelled it wrong, and I apologize.
No, it's right in these ones.
Okay, it's right here. Adrian did it.
So then I would be happy to entertain a joint motion to approve both sets of minutes, so October 10th and October 17th.
So moved.
Second. Any further discussion?
No.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Next school committee meeting is scheduled for December 12th, 2023.
I think that's okay.
I am possibly getting surgery for my knee.
Oh, I would love that for you.
Would love that for me too.
So we'll let you Zoom? Is that what you're asking?
So, yes, unless I get surgery.
Okay.
Do we have a quorum otherwise? Is there enough people?
Everyone else is good? Okay, that's wonderful. Then
A motion
the
to
time has come. We just
adjourn.
need a motion to adjourn, folks. So moved. Second?
All in favor?
No discussion.
Aye. Discussion? Wonderful.
Need to talk about it.
Thank you.